Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go through just an intro of just an overview of business items just to get out of the way before we get into this. And then we'll have some intros for anybody who'd like to introduce themselves, including our council members in attendance. And then we'll go through an overview presentation of where things are at, and then some outstanding questions that we'd like to pose to all of you. So I'm going to go ahead and very quickly do my intro items. So greetings, everyone, and welcome to the May listening session for the California Truth and Healing Council. Today's listening session is designated as the Central Region listening session, with Southern taking place on Monday, Eastern took place on Tuesday, Northern was yesterday, and Central is today. Tomorrow is the regular meeting of the council with public comment taking place from 3 to 4 p.m., as well as throughout the agenda for items that you'd like to speak on. My name is Christina Snyder, and I'm a member of the Dry Creek Rancheria Band of Pomo Indians. I'm Mihil Kana and Makamo descent, and I'm the tribal advisor for Governor Gavin Newsom. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the land I'm joining you from is the homelands of the Patwin peoples. I'm now going to briefly walk through some of the logistics and preliminary business for today's meeting. First, we are recording this listening session, and it's available for public participation via Zoom and dial-in. So please feel free to share with anybody who you'd like to join. And that's not limited just to the folks in your region. Anyone who is available to join right now is able to join. The listening sessions are being held to increase community input specific to the charge of the council. And we ask that you come to these sessions prepared to engage in a thoughtful way that will further the effectiveness of the work. We envision these sessions as ultimately being working sessions that are part of the council rather than just opportunities for public comment. As a reminder, we're taking notes throughout these sessions and will provide monthly summary overviews for the council and the public to review, which we aim to release prior to the regular meetings, but that may change depending on staff capacity. These summary overviews are not meant to be word-for-word records or minutes of the sessions, but are prepared to provide a brief of the discussions that took place for the convenience of the council and the public. For those interested in following the council, ongoing updates, including listening session recordings and the summary overview documents I just mentioned, are available at the California Truth and Healing Council Updates WordPress page at cthcupdates.wordpress.com. You can also get updates for events by following the Governor's Office of the Tribal Advisor on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Listening session recordings are available in full and posted at the CTHC Updates WordPress for those that are interested in hearing detailed discussion and comments. Additional details, including meeting dates, agendas, and background information, are available at tribalaffairs.ca.gov/CTHC. If you need technical assistance during today's session, please contact the Office of Tribal Advisor email at info.tribalaffairs@gov.ca.gov. And if you haven't already done so, we'd appreciate if you could change your name to say your name and your organization or tribe. And if you're comfortable, you can also introduce yourself in the chat like many of you have done already. When we get to the discussion portion of today's meeting, we'd also appreciate people being on cam if possible. At any point during today's listening session, you can ask questions by using the raise hand function or simply unmute your line. If you're using the Zoom app, you should be able to raise your hand using the app controls, but you can also use Alt-Y in Windows or Option-Y on Mac to raise or lower your hand. You can also directly message me, Loretta, or Michael, or the group with any comments you have, or let us know that you have a comment, and we'll either read the comment into the session or call on you to speak. If you called in, you can unmute your line using *6, and you can email written comments to the email I mentioned before, the info.tribalaffairs@gov.ca.gov. Once COVID-19 restrictions alleviate, we'll have listening sessions both via Zoom and in-person meeting locations throughout the 4 geographical areas of the state. In anticipation of this, if there are community gathering locations that you recommend or you'd like to host a session, please reach out to us at that email that I mentioned earlier to set up an upcoming listening session. Now, before we begin, I'd like to remind participants that all of our council members, Loretta and I in the Office of the Tribal Advisor who are staffing the work, and many of you are members of the victim population in need of collective healing. So I ask that you engage with the council, our office, and each other with respect and with your whole heart in a healing mindset. Many of us doing this work are navigating systems that were not built for us to make change that was never contemplated. This in itself takes an enormous amount of patience and emotional integrity, and we're all doing our best to make strides in these spaces. So thanks again for joining us. And I think we'll do brief intros before we open up the presentation so that you all can see what we're up to and then also engage in the discussion on this topic. So I'm going to turn it over very quick to staff. Loretta, if you'd like to introduce yourself real quick.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Loretta Miranda, and I am Serrano and Cupeño. I'm a descendant of the Morongo Band of Mission Indians, and I serve as Chief Deputy Tribal Advisor and Special Counsel for the Governor's Office of the Tribal Advisor, and I'm happy to have you all here today.
Great, thanks, Loretta. And then also for awareness, we have Michael Parkon, who helps keep Loretta and I organized and sane. And so if you ever need anything, he's on. And then I'll turn it over to the council members who are on. I see Council Member Kessler Mata, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah, thanks. Hi, folks. I'm Kusla Kessler Mata. I'm Yaktitu Titu Yaktilhini Chumash, and I am calling in from San Francisco, home of the Ohlone, right? It's a beautiful day here, so thanks for joining. I'm happy to see so many faces today.
Wonderful. And if anyone else would like to introduce yourself, you are welcome to do so at this time. And if you want to share how you heard about the listening session and then also anything you're hoping for this council, we'd love to hear that as well.
I guess I'll move over. Sorry, I'm running on one laptop and two big monitors. So Shakmos, my name's Deborah Kroll, enrolled member of the Hakalom Selenian tribe from the Central California coast. I'm calling in from the homeland of the Akamel Atham and our far-flung relatives, the Peeposh, here in Phoenix. So I've actually been following this for a while, and I'm interested just to see where everything is and see how things are going and what I could do to help. Thanks.
Thank you. We appreciate your joining us. Anyone else who'd like to introduce themselves, feel free to unmute your line and do so now.
Hachumi Sasaksi. Hello, my friends. My name is Mona Olivas Tucker, and I'm the tribal chair for Yaktichu Ticho Yaktalhini, Northern Chumash tribe of San Luis Obispo County and region. And we're looking forward to hearing the presentation today and hearing more about your work. And I became aware of this council through KUSLA. So thank you, KUSLA. And thank you to everyone who's participating and bringing this to us all.
Thank you and welcome.
Murio Yaksuwa Wakisi Murio Kisja Yaktilhini Yaktichu wa Tikala wa Slisamu wa Sitaka wa Tilhini Tichu. I'm a board member for our Yaktilhini Yaktichu Northern Chumash tribe. I'm in our family's village because I come from many tribes. So I'm in our family's village of Ritoxi, which is the Tamian nation. Also, I live in San Jose, as well as I'm also from Deborah. My family is also from the village of Etzmal. So I'm also Selenian Indian too, but I'm a member of the Northern Chumash tribe. So I'm from many wonderful tribes. So Stösje Yakchashina, which is, it's a beautiful day and I'm honored to be here.
Wonderful, and thank you for sharing.
Hi, I'm Teresa Sanchez. I'm from Tribal Council member for the Morongo Band of Mission Indians. It's my first time attending one of these meetings. So thank you.
Welcome.
My name is Kainkarak Didi Manzanares Ibarra, Ganapai Dolores Manzanares. I'm tribal chairwoman of Rumsen Amaturatai Ohlone, and I'm calling in from Serrano land down here in Southern California. I've been on a couple of these meetings now. Took us a while to get on the list for the Native American Heritage Commission, due to COVID and other issues that we've had, but now that we're on it, we've been on a few meetings and we plan to continue to be on the meetings and take an interest in what is going on in the land of our people down in the, or should I say up in the Carmel, Monterey area. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you and welcome. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves to the group at this time?
Yes, hello. My name is Lindsey Perez. I'm Tongva Keech Native American, and I've been on a part of these listening calls for the last couple of months. I've been here since almost the beginning of it, watching as the committee has spoken about many important issues, and I'm glad to be here and be on this journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Teddy.
Hi, my name is Teddy Simon. I'm Navajo and I'm the Indigenous Justice Advocate at the ACLU of Northern California. It's been a pleasure to have been able to attend some of these in the past and just excited to be here in community with you all, hear what people's concerns and recommendations are, and kind of think how we as a civil society organization might be able to support the work of the council.
Wonderful, thank you. Anyone else who'd like to introduce themselves at this time? And again, if you're not comfortable speaking with the group, you can also request meetings with our office or with the council separately. We're happy to take those meetings and then also separate consultations. And then if anyone is just shy of speaking and going on cam or is just tired of Zoom, you can also write into the chat and we will go ahead and read those into the record. Or if you prefer us not to read it into the whole meeting, you can also just chat with us personally just so that we have that for awareness. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the presentation portion of today. And then Loretta, I'm going to task you with kind of monitoring the chat in case anything comes up. So does that look okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Thanks, Loretta. So here's the agenda for how we're going to go through today. We're going to go through an overview of the council and its charge, go through the agenda for the May council meeting, go through some of the updates that have happened since the last listening sessions, and then pose some questions to all of you to think about. I think there is, if Michael or Loretta could put a link to the questions that we're going to ask in case people want to think about them ahead of time. And then we'll kind of open it up to general listening and discussion for the group. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And again, these questions, they don't need to be answered today. If you have thoughts about them, you can also submit them to our email or think about them and bring them to the council meeting on Friday, where the last hour will be dedicated to public comment, or you can think about them and bring them up in later listening sessions. So what is the California Truth and Healing Council? The council is a council made up of representatives from California Native American tribes that's charged with bearing witness to, recording, examining existing documentation of, and receiving California Native American narratives to clarify the historical relationship between the state of and California Native Americans in the spirit of truth and healing. Note that they're not driving the agenda. They're not the only voice in this space. They're here to receive, to witness, and to examine the documentation that is brought forth by California Native American peoples. The council will submit a final written report of findings to the governor's office by 2025. The final report should reflect a holistic understanding of the historical relationship between California Native Americans and the state. And what this means is that it should reflect not just, the perspective of anthropologists, the perspective of non-Native historians. It should reflect the entire experience from the Native perspective. And the final report may also make recommendations aimed at reparation and restoration, and consider how to prevent similar depredations or policies in the future. The council is organized under a charter and is made up of voting members and non-voting members. Right now, there are only voting members, and once the council is in a place to kind of move forward and think about what else they need, they will think about adding non-voting members if that feels right for them, but they have kind of the power to determine whether they want to do that or not. There are 12 voting members from each of the 4 regions, with 1 seat for a non-federally recognized designee in each region. And then each region also has an alternate voting member to ensure quorum for action. The council welcomes and encourages all available methods for public participation, which includes attending and observing all meetings of the council, and also engaging in all meetings of the council, submitting written statements to the council, making oral statements and testimony to the council, participating in interactive dialogues, panel discussions, and informal meetings, hosting affiliate events on issues relevant to the work of the council, and joining the work of the subcommittees. This is just kind of a visual for folks to see how the council structure is structured. But this is kind of the whole council, so everybody is included. If you're a California Native American tribe, we're seeking to begin in-person consultation meetings as early as June 16th if your tribe is comfortable. So please reach out to the Tribal Affairs email if your tribe is ready to meet in person. We're flexible about the method and mode of meetings, and meetings will be recorded and transcribed. Tribes may share as much or as little as they're comfortable with. And when I say we're flexible about the method and mode of meetings, if our office isn't the right, we're not the right people to receive those narratives, but you all want to capture those narratives and you have a trusted messenger or trusted receiver of those narratives, we can work with you and we can set it up so that that is captured with the trusted messengers or the trusted receivers, whether that's members of the council or members of your tribe or members of the community that are most trusted. And then outside of tribal consultation, the council and the tribal advisor are available to meet with Native American individuals, organizations, and groups at their request. This is the schedule for this year and will depend on how much the council gets done in each meeting. They may kind of shift to the ordinary schedule that would be quarterly. And that's what's contemplated under the charter. But the council is currently meeting on a monthly basis, which is virtual until further guidance is issued from the state for the duration of 2021 or until the council decides otherwise to set up the foundations for the council's work. And when we talk about the foundations, that's, you know, the organic documents that help the council move forward. It's also the different foundational subcommittees that will help kind of structure the council's work. And then it's also figuring out the different staffing needed to perform the work. So these are the meeting dates. This Friday is the next one. And then after that, June 18th, July 23rd, August 20th, September 17th, October 22nd, November 19th. And then hopefully this will revert to the previous schedule where they'd meet either early in December or hold off on meeting until the next regularly scheduled meeting in March. So the agenda for this Friday is, as you can see, very ambitious, but anything that is not covered will hold over to the next meeting. We just want to make sure that we're being inclusive of all of the things that need to get done. And so we'll just keep adding and taking off as things get addressed. But we'll go through the general welcome, roll call, and then a traditional opening. And I think the council is open to other members of the Native American community performing this traditional opening. So if there's anybody who's interested in doing that for this Friday, please let us know either in the chat or that email that we provided before. And we'll make sure that you are included. And then we'll introduce Carmen Lucas, who is the new appointee to the Southern region. We'll go through the bylaws and process. And so there's updated draft bylaws that are available to the council, and we can post those today on the website for folks to review. They look substantially similar to the previous ones that were posted from last month, which are already available on the website. But we'll make sure that folks have those to work through as we look at them tomorrow. And then council member updates in case council members have been engaging in inside conversations or with other partners. We'll then go through a discussion of how to engage with the public and then also any public relations guidelines and process that should be in place. And this is to kind of frame how the council engages with both media partners, but then also other bodies that want to engage with the council. And then there will be a discussion of council member code of ethics and what should be included in something like this. There will then be a discussion of respectful engagement in meetings and listening sessions, given that this is a very traumatic kind of thing to talk about, and everybody is part of the victim population. We want to make sure that we have some ground rules in place before we get into the real meat of this work. We'll then have a budget update, which we'll update you all on in just a moment. And then we'll have the subcommittee discussion. So the funding subcommittee, which I'll update you all on in a second, will need to be staffed with subcommittee members. And then there'll be a discussion of the establishment or potential establishment of a committee that would work on issues specific to disenrollees or recognition, or could be two different subcommittees. A committee that would focus on education, and whether that is split up into two different pieces. A committee that would be specific to the elders, similar to the youth subcommittee that was created last meeting. And then any other committees that folks are thinking about that might be helpful to the work of the council. We'll then go into a discussion of culturally informed wellness practitioners and contracting generally, and what are some preferred qualifications. And this is to, we're going to be engaging more and more third-party partners, and we're going to ask you some questions about what you think about this. And that feedback that we get today and that we've gotten this week will inform this conversation with council. And then we'll have an update on some of the public and community engagement that has happened up to this point. We'll then talk about topics for the next meeting, including the June 18th anniversary programming. So June 18th will be the anniversary of the governor's apology and the executive order that created this council. So we're hoping to build out the agenda a bit more to have some programming, and we'll ask you a little bit about what you think about that later today. So now we're going to go into some updates. We have appointed Carmen Lucas from Kwame Laguna as the final voting member of the California Truth and Healing Council. And so she'll be with us on Friday. She joined us for the Monday listening session, and we're just really excited to have her join this effort. Budget. So due to the impacts and uncertain outlook of COVID-19, the 2020 to 21 enacted budget included $100,000 annually through 2024-25 to support stipends and travel for council members to attend council meetings, providing culturally appropriate wellness services for quarterly meetings, and live streaming meetings and transcribing meetings and consultations. And this is for transparency and for preserving the public record. The May revision that came out just last week to the governor's proposed 2021-22 budget includes a requested additional $350,000 annually for a total of $450,000 through 24-25. So that'll end in June 2025 to support the work of the council. If enacted, the additional funds would go to the following activities: coordinating research, compilation, and consolidation of all known resources available within the State Library and Archives at the direction of and for presentation to the council. And then also coordination of additional research efforts and compilation of appendices for the final report. And then also it can go to compiling and composing the report of findings and recommendations, and all of the drafting that goes into that as well. And then council and office travel for consultation meetings and subcommittee work. So some updates from the subcommittees, and if there are more if there are more that you want to jump in, Councilmember Kessler Mata on the academic partnerships, we can definitely hear those as well, but this is just a summary. And then we have some questions that came out of that meeting, but the Academic Partnerships Subcommittee met and has recommends additional council discussion to refine the report goals and research agenda of this work. The Youth Council Subcommittee met and seeks additional community engagement to address outstanding questions, which we're going to ask all of you today. And then the Funding Partnerships Subcommittee has been created, but not yet staffed. And that subcommittee is really going to work with, we have a partner that is working with different funders to help fund some of the work here. And we're going to actually ask you about some of the stuff that should be funded outside of the state budget. and will help both with larger documentation of this effort, but also funding both the things that are needed by the council, the things that are needed by the community, and then the items for reparation and those recommendations on the back end of this work as well. Other subcommittees that are currently under consideration, as I mentioned, are subcommittees specific to disenrolled and non-federally recognized tribal members, elders committee, and then education committees. So now we're going to get into the questions for the public, but before we do that, Councilmember Kessler Mata, did you have anything you wanted to add from the subcommittee?
An academic subcommittee. Yeah, I think the main thing that we're looking at there is trying to figure out, with whatever portion of the budget gets committed to partnerships, like what is it that we really want to get out of those partnerships? So to the extent that, you know, we may be interested in community engaged research, what are the trusted institutions throughout California that tribes would be okay with us partnering with and would be comfortable working with, if any? And so kind of getting feedback on that would be helpful for us.
Wonderful, thank you. So we're going to ask some general questions at this time, and it looks like Michael put into the chat the full list of questions, which is that CTHC updates.wordpress.com with the questions for the public May 2021. So the first bit that we're just going to pause on while we think about it are the scoping the council's work. And this is kind of the major question that's been posed by the council, but then also by folks wanting to know what will be under the purview of the council. And so the council's charge is to receive, examine, and report on the history of the state's negative actions toward tribes through the Native lens and experience, and to recommend remedial measures that can be taken. So the questions for the council that would be very helpful to hear from the public on are: what early state actions should the state be most accountable for from the Native perspective? And what state actions have been most harmful to today's California Native peoples? So I'm gonna pause a bit.
Christine, I just want to flag in the chat, we have a comment from Sarah Perez about the fund.
I can see it.
Okay.
So I can answer that. The funding is going toward the council because we have some constraints on what we can do with the state budget, depending on just because we're the state. So the funding is going toward primarily the outcome document of the council, and the travel piece is to make sure that the council can attend and fully engage with this work. Part of the recommendations that we've seen in other similar councils actually fund full-time work of councils like this. So we do want to make sure that we are preparing the council to be effective and to do what it needs to do to get this work done effectively. Right now, that is true that there is no travel needed because of COVID, but because we want to make sure that this council has reach and is able to go and make things easier for tribal members that are in locations or in places where we want to make it as easy as possible for them to engage with the council. It's our view that it's easier for us to come to everybody than it is for everybody to come to us. And that we have some constraints on what we're able to fund for public participation. So that's one of the questions that we're going to ask in the external funding piece, is what would be helpful to help members of the public, and specifically California Native people, engage with the council itself. Sorry, I just choked. How much of the budget is being spent on marketing? We have some money that is going to be spent on marketing, and so we're just seeking right now, and I think we're going to ask this in one of the questions as we move forward. But that budget it's for the day-to-day kind of marketing, and we haven't gotten a contract in place, and we're hoping to hear about folks that would be good to help with that on the day-to-day. The bigger marketing piece, and I hesitate to say marketing, it's more of like a public relations campaign and public awareness campaign, will be taken on by that external partner I mentioned, who will be seeking philanthropic funds to do kind of a bigger national, bigger movement type of piece on this. And so the state budget has some funds that are dedicated to that, but part of the reasoning for that was that the state contracting process takes so long that by the time we could get someone in place using those funds, council will probably be, well into its work. And then if funds are not utilized in totality, they can be used for other contracts, but we anticipate that they probably will be utilized. And so if there are leftover funds, we'll be thinking about how to use it for this work. We've tried to use as little as possible for, salary and overhead. We want it to all go to the work of the council. So there's no money going to salary and overhead. Well, overhead, the overhead that it goes to is just streaming services and recording and the transcription services.
Christina, can you maybe say, is it, so the budget was authorized, or has it, because when we had the academic subcommittee meeting, it hadn't yet been approved. Has the money been reinstated then completely?
Well, there's 100,000 that's there right now. So the additional funds that have been asked for are for travel, and that's for the consultation pieces. And then also if your subcommittee, for example, wants to go visit different academic institutions to kind of coordinate with all of that. Or if the youth subcommittee, for example, wants to travel and get feedback from different youth, it would go to that. And so the travel that's already authorized is almost nothing because it was during COVID. The travel that we're asking for is in anticipation of a reopened state. And then, so that hasn't been authorized. We won't know if it's authorized until mid-June, hopefully, but the legislature is prioritizing things in kind of a patchwork way. So hopefully we'll have clarity by mid-June, but that's correct. There's only 100,000 right now, and that mostly goes to the wellness practitioner budget, which we're seeking to kind of move forward on those contracts right now, and the overhead for streaming services and being able to do all of these meetings so frequently, which ends up being a bit more costly, and the transcription services for meetings and then the consultations has been included too.
Yeah, I think if I can make a recommendation, I think it is important that we make sure we're being really transparent with the community about how, any dollars that may come in and then how we account for them. So if we could, I don't know what the cycle would be, but if it's a quarterly report or even budget updates for every time we meet, it would be, I think, super helpful to prepare that kind of document for everyone's benefit, right? But also, will it carry over was just my last question. The $100,000, if it's not all spent out, will it carry over?
Typically funds won't carry over. So I'll have to discuss that with finance and see what's possible. But we'll keep you posted on that. I'll make sure to follow up on that. And then there's a question about applying to assist with marketing. If folks want to do that, please let us know that you are interested, and we're looking for potential firms that could assist on the day-to-day stuff. And that will kind of get wrapped into the funding partnerships thing that I just mentioned. But we are happy to consider everybody. And we do have some questions about what would be preferred in terms of qualifications for that. Okay. We also have, what are the responsibilities of the people on the council as far as reaching out to tribes in the areas they represent to notify them of this committee and to get their opinion on the questions being asked here. So there's no affirmative responsibility on the council members. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for them to reach out to the tribes in those areas. And so we are in the process of putting together the contact lists for each of those areas so that folks like council member Kessler Mata can reach out specifically. Part of this is, again, we also want to make it as easy as possible for the council members to engage. And so we're still, and I apologize, we are still kind of building the plane as we're flying it. And so if there are suggestions about how to do it better, we would love to hear those as well. And then we have a suggestion to push to legislatively recognize the unrecognized California tribes. And even though there's acknowledgement of through CEQA legislation, legislative recognition will clarify the status. There are also federal programs that are open to state recognized tribes. Is the committee discussing this? Why or why not? The committee is not yet discussing this because, again, it's still building the plane. And so I think that's something that could be discussed. I would say where there are recommendations that would involve the legislature, those need to be made clear because that's something that the executive branch doesn't have as much ability to push. And so that is something that could definitely be under the purview of a committee that is specific to non-federally recognized issues. And then go ahead.
Can I pause and ask a question of the folks here? Because just on this thing, we are going to be talking about subcommittees tomorrow in the full meeting. And one of those subcommittees is disenrollment related issues / recognition. I wanted to see if I can get feedback from folks here about whether or not those are one committee or are those two different committees, because I have an inclination that they may be two different ones. And I just don't know, that's my thought, but I don't know what other folks are thinking about that. And, the issues of recognition are massive, right? And it's going to take a lot to kind of work through that. So, open it up to folks to maybe respond if that's possible.
Kusla, this is Tachi, this is Deborah Murillo. I know we're supposed to be using chat, but I just want to kind of bring it to the attention of everyone that, I'm an older person and I just can't type that fast as things are going. And I just like to make recommendations that we're able to, besides just using chat, able to give input this way. I think it might be a little bit easier for some people. So I just want to make that recommendation. Because right now we're addressing these two questions, correct? Because things are just going so quickly. Am I correct or incorrect? They're on this PowerPoint presentation, the two questions that you have.
So we'd like for people to address the two questions here, but I think that if other questions arise, that's okay too. And you're welcome to unmute at any time. So you don't have to use the chat. Okay,
so then I would like to give input real quickly. And I just think that, for question one, it's a commitment to earmark a solid budget to be effective to address this project and identify a stipend for you board members, because I think that as Indian people, our time is just as valuable as non-Indian people. So I think it's very important that the state earmarks budget for members. But I also think that there needs to be an increase of seating, because I believe that if we look at the demographics in California, we have a lot of non-federally recognized tribes, but we have a lot of federally recognized tribes, but we have a lot of non-federally recognized tribes. And I think it would be very equitable to have a seat at the table by having more representatives of non-federally recognized tribes. Also, my recommendation be increase the seating, as well as doing some outreach towards non-federally recognized tribes. I think that's extremely important. I think that so I said the outreach, and I think for number two, I was thinking about what are the state actions that are most harmful, and I was looking at also the commitment of like the budget for the years that the state is committing for this project. It's like it took 500 years to to make us in a situation in terms of where we're at today as Indian people. And so I think we need a little bit more time, a little bit more of a commitment from the state to help fix these things. So, and then what I mean by fix these things is what the whole premise of this meeting is California Truth and Healing Council is working on having that worked out. My recommendation, I think somebody asked for recommendation in terms of partnership with other people. I think Jolie Proudfit would be an ideal person to bring to the table for, I know that she works at a university and her department that she does, and she also has she has a business also, but I think that in terms of putting names out, I think that she would be a person that I would recommend for it. So, but I just wanted to say thank you for letting me talk, because I start getting nervous trying to type and I'm hearing, all this stuff. So just thank you, because I don't type that fast. So
Thank you. And does anyone have any other input on this specific question? And then we'll turn back to the chat too. Or on the question that Councilmember Kessler Mata had. I see a raised hand from Chairwoman Tucker. Looks like you're unmuted, so you can go ahead.
Yes, I support all of the comments that Debbie Murillo just made, and I would like to see this council move in a direction that engages with the non-federally recognized tribes in a way that it does become more inclusive. I don't know the numbers, but there are a lot of people who are not in federally recognized tribes, and the burden on unfederally recognized tribes to engage in projects just like this one is tremendous, because we have no income streams, and our hours that we spend are volunteer hours. And so we feel that our work and we feel that who we are equally important, and would like to be treated that way. And that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. And so on that piece, when we get to the part about what are the needs of the communities, we'd like to hear a bit more about that, because I think that there's a valid point to be made that non-federally recognized tribal members and tribal councils also don't have the same kind of supports for engaging in these type of things. So would love to hear a bit more about that when we get to that point. And then I see we have a raised hand. I'm going to very quickly go through the chat because there's a couple of answers that were responsive to Councilmember Kessler Mata's question. It looks like most of the chat thinks that disenrollment should be separately considered from recognition. And that's several comments. And then it looks like we have a raised hand, and I don't want to mispronounce, so I won't, but from Ms. Barrios.
Haku, thank you for having me on, and thank you for bringing us all together today. I do have another meeting, but I wanted to kind of just talk a little bit about Ventura Chumash situation. I'm here on my homelands and able to speak, and it means a lot to me, so thank you for having me. Here in Ventura, us Chumash are not federally recognized. We, due to missionization, neocolonialism, we don't have access to lands. Our culture and our language suffered a great loss during those times and continue to suffer a great loss. And not being federally recognized is extremely harmful to us. We don't have a lot of funding streams because of our recognition status. We don't have meeting spaces to gather to learn our language and to learn our culture in a way that is ceremonial. We just don't have access to that. And as we know, culture is a form of prevention. And we also know that our Native people suffer from high rates of drug abuse, suicide. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so when we want to revitalize our culture and we want to make our communities healthier, it's really important that we have spaces and the right to do so. And not being federally recognized really, really harms us, and especially not having access to those funding streams that federally recognized tribes have access to. So that's just my perspective. And again, I'm sorry I have to run to another meeting, but I also am a sociocultural anthropologist, and my research was actually on tribal disenrollment. So I'm more than happy to assist in any way that I can. And thank you for even bringing that up. I think it's extremely important that we talk about those issues. So thank you.
Thank you. And we appreciate your joining us. It looks like we have another raised hand from, I think, Louisa Ramirez.
Yes, hello. I'm Louisa Harris. I'm tribal chairwoman for Ohlone Coast Nation Nation. And I'd just like to say thank you to those of you who have spoke up, Deborah and Mona. Non-recognition is very important to all of us. It is a constant disagreement and fight with city agencies, county agencies, or government agencies that really don't listen to us when we go into consultation. And state recognition, I believe, would give us that authority to go in and meet and be taken seriously. I mean, I've talked with people from state parks, and they can't make decisions. And that's one of the requirements with consultation, that we meet with someone who can make a decision, and yet they have to go back and check and see if it's okay for what we've requested. And state recognition would make it possible for us to be on equal grounds with these agencies. So it is very important, and I thank those of you who have already spoke up on that, because I believe it's one of the most important items that all of our tribes, nations can hope will happen. And so thank you, and I'll let you move on. Just wanted to let you know that I can agree on behalf of Ohlone Coast Nation. Thank you.
And I'm, for some reason, it's not letting me do the hand wave thing. I have to go to a meeting too, but there is one other point I'd like to make to kind of back up Chairwoman Ramirez, and that is she and I'm like the tribal representative, and I know there's other people here, to the West Coast Ocean Alliance, which is a regional organization that is developing joint advocacy for coastal lands and water conservation, protection, and not even having formal state recognition is making things really hard for us. The organization is working really hard to make federal agencies like NOAA and the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management more aware of our issues. You know, right now, about 60% of all the coastal lands and waters in California lie within ancestral lands of non-federally recognized tribes. And there's 1/3 of the tribes in California are not federally recognized. And I know that this is going to be an issue later, but I really want to raise this now. And we really need to start thinking about how we can give the non-recognized tribes more enforcement authority, more teeth, and work with especially federal agencies to get us a seat at the table. Because otherwise your work is going to be in patchwork. You know, the California Coastal Commission is doing a good job. I know they've backed up Chairwoman Ramirez a few times, but relying on one agency is kind of like relying on an executive order, because the next elected executive can come and reverse it. If it's encoded in legislation from the legislative branch, I think this will go a lot farther towards helping us be able to protect our lands, and especially our coastal lands and water. So anyways, but thanks for letting me have my 2 cents worth, and I've got to go to my next meeting now, and keep me posted. Thanks.
Thank you. And
I'd like to say something real quickly before Deborah leaves. I want to say thank you, Deborah, because I think what's really important for the committee to understand is that this central area that we're having this meeting about, it's not coincidental that economically most of all the unfederally recognized tribes are in this group. So I'm going to be asking the committee to consider using some multiple measures and when they're looking at the central area, because if you look at the central area, majority of the tribes are non-federally recognized tribes. And so in order for the committee and the state to be equitable, multiple measures are going to have to be used to consider our people. I mean, we all know that was out of, I don't want to go on a tangent, but it was the economic gain. And we all know that if we look at the coast, Central Coast, it's not a coincidence that all unfederally recognized tribes are in the wealthiest areas. So I just want to you all know that already, but I want to make that point of information. And I want to thank Ms. Kroll for kind of bringing that up and stimulating that conversation.
Thank you for that. Are there additional comments, questions, feedback on either Councilmember Kessler-Mata's question or the questions that are on the screen right now? And if you can't see everyone's face, you can also slide the screen over to about halfway, and then you can see the presentation with everybody's faces. Okay. I'm going to move to the next set of questions. So, okay, these are the academic partnerships questions. What should the goal of the final report be? I'm going to read through them, but you can pick whatever you want to respond to or pick something else to respond to. How should the council frame its research agenda? How can the council be most inclusive in incorporating research and narrative into this work? And that means, geographically inclusive, viewpoint experientially inclusive. Are there preferred academic partners the council should be speaking with, or preferred models? Or conversely, are there certain partners that the council should avoid working with because of, non-inclusivity or their past work with Native peoples? How should the council archive testimony received? And where should the data and information live? So I'm going to go ahead and then also, I see there's 3 hands raised. The first one on my screen is Louise. So if you'd like to go ahead and unmute yourself, you can go ahead.
I'd like to ask for you to go back to the previous screen, because I don't believe that the last set item was actually addressed. So if we could go back, and I'd like to speak to the last part on that screen.
Sure, I'll do that right now.
Sure.
Let's see.
Okay, the second part. What state actions have been most harmful to today's California Native people? Let me complain. I believe that the Native American Heritage Commission does not have enough authority to stand with us when we contact them. I think that's really harmful that they don't back us up when we have severe problems, and because they don't have the authority to. It's not that they may not want to, they don't have the authority, and therefore it makes it even hard on us. I know that there's many times I've called and asked and have not been able to get the help that I need because they don't have the authority. So I think we need to review. We need to make sure that individuals listed are who they say they are, and that as far as their system of MLDs needs to be reviewed. I was told that this one person was an archaeologist, non-native, and was being listed as an MLD. And there is nothing we can do about it because anyone who submits their name can be considered an MLD. And so I think that with the Native Heritage Commission has to be granted more authority to make sure that we are who we say we are as well. I have no problem providing my genealogy, providing who our tribe is, how we go through what we require of our members. And I think that it's something that the state, who we want them to give us authority by state recognition, that they need to make sure that we are who we say we are and not giving us phony recognition. I believe there are so many of us out there who are willing to do that. And I think right now that's very harmful to us during consultation, because sometimes cities have to consult with 10 separate tribes. And we need to make sure that they are who they are. And unfortunately, like I said, it's the Native Heritage Commission doesn't have that authority to make those decisions. They must accept anyone who requests to be an MLD. So I think that's a very important question that would help strengthen us. And if we're going to get legislation to say that we need to be state recognized, that they need to know that they're correctly recognizing the tribes that exist. So that's my opinion. Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we have a raised hand from Leah Mata Fragua, if I pronounced that correctly. I'm not sure if it's
yeah, you did. Well, and thank you, Louise. I agree with that. Thank you for saying that there are people on that list that don't belong there, and so having a different mechanism for recognizing unrecognized tribes would be beneficial. But my other question was, and I think Debbie Murillo brought it up, and I do think maybe going or looking at CSUs through Jolie's work might be an option for moving this forward. I just think we need to look at all options and look at the CSU system and not just a UC system.
Great, thank you. We have a raised hand from Dee Dee. If you'd like to unmute your line.
Okay, I just want to go back to what Louise was saying. Like I said, we recently just got on the Heritage Commission list after we had submitted paperwork quite a while back. And just FYI, Louise, we had to pretty much jump through hoops and submit so much documentation, our genealogy, our tribal bylaws, letters of support, letters saying we still function as a tribe, doing ceremonies. I mean, it was a thick binder that we submitted. So Heritage Commission has strengthened their guidelines and their requests as to people applying to be on their rolls. So I do know they have gotten a lot stricter. Makes me wonder about the groups that got on way back that were just put on there by submitting names and their MLDs. I know a lot of them would probably be kicked off if they had to try and submit that now. But I know as far as us and the new groups that have just gotten on, Heritage Commission is doing really a good job at going through people's records. So I just wanted to let you know that, I mean, it was tough for us, and, you know, they went through stuff, asked for more paperwork, which we were able to provide. So, you know, they are doing a good job on it. And I do commend them for that. I mean, they wanted records from way back and proper documentation. So they are doing that. And I was hoping they would go back and ask a few people on there for their records, which you're right, they probably couldn't give them. And I do think that a lot of organizations should be checked, because I think that should be tribes only. And that's my opinion. I don't think just someone that has a Native organization should be on there, because they don't represent, a lot of them don't represent us in the proper way, you know, as far as when it does go back to repatriation, to burials and things like that. They don't do their ceremonies. They don't even know what that is. So anyway, I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can add just for this group, because again, I think that the Native American Heritage Commission can look at some of this stuff, but again, I don't want all of this group's work to be overtaken by the Native American Heritage Commission and vice versa, because they have a statutory charge, and then this group has an executive order charge to do some things. So if there are things where the Heritage Commission could have, you know, a better scope or have better teeth or things like that, I think that this council can think about that. But conversely, their processes, their procedures don't want to, you know, have this council kind of overtake what they're already kind of doing. So, but I do want to clarify that, well, I guess I can tell you this too. Well, I right now serve as the executive secretary of the Native American Heritage Commission and the tribal advisor. We in this next budget are going to be separating those two positions so that it makes it easier to kind of also deal with these issues in kind of a different way. But the commission itself, while I'm still in the executive secretary capacity and can kind of share a bit, is looking at SB 18 regulation. So that's the list of all tribes, and we'll be engaging with all tribes in tribal consultation, we think, in the near term. And so just so you're aware, any of this work and any of the issues that you have with the list as it's developed over the past few decades, since it started as one thing and kind of evolved into something else, all of that can go into those tribal consultations and in that regulations process, which will also be a lot more restrictive about who, how people can get on the list, how the commission determines it, and all of you will have the opportunity to engage in that process as well. Deborah, did you have?
Invite Deborah? Not really, I'm just teasing. Deborah,
if you want to change your names on here, because I don't want to be disrespectful of titles, but I can't remember.
I'm kind of saying a lot of things here, but first, I just wanted to say that, you know, our community, you know, we applaud you guys for doing the work that you do. Okay, so it's real important that you hear that. But I also think that I put in the box, and I wanted to make sure I said it, because I want to make sure I articulated correctly, is when it said that, you know, where the actions are most harmful, is that I just think that at the state level, and you said it real well, you know, you had two seats of doing two things. And I'd like to see this at the state level. The state gets a nice contribution from federally recognized tribes. Those monies go to the state. So I think, you know, our communities contribute a lot to the state in terms of funding. So it would be really nice if they developed an overall a huge department and had these programs and umbrellaed underneath each other so they can talk to each other, but also provide some supportive services to some of the tribes that need the kind of help. Because like one of our colleagues said earlier about how they just recently got state recognized, a lot of our communities that are unfully recognized, they're paying a good $5,000 out of their pockets for the genealogy and all the things that the Native American Heritage Commission is requiring. And I think it would be really nice in terms of, you know, being accountable. What could they do to be accountable is also look in terms of contributing, you know, and contributing to communities and helping us instead of giving us processes that we have to jump through, but also providing supportive services. So, but I want to say that, you know, I do appreciate the work that the whole team is doing, and I want to thank you, because I know that we'll get carried away. I'll get carried away with saying, oh, this and this and this and that. But I think it's really important that you all know that I appreciate you guys being here and being an advocate for us. So I'll
Thank you, appreciate it. And I think at least from our perspective on the council and staff, we've been on the other side of this too. So we know the deal, and we appreciate the input, and we don't want you to hold back where you think things need to improve, because our being kind of in this space is how we can be more effective, because now we're on the inside and able to push out while you push in simultaneously. So we really do appreciate it. One thing I did want to speak to, because my colleague in the governor's office will get upset with me if I don't clarify, the funds that come in through the gaming tribes are restricted to certain uses, and they're basically only for the state side of regulating the gaming industry and other related uses. So it's not something that could be technically used for other purposes, but I do understand the sentiment, and I do agree that there should be more of an investment in supporting tribal communities. One other piece that you mentioned was giving non-federally recognized tribes and certain other Native peoples more capacity to engage with these systems. And I think that is something that is like very on point for the types of things we would ask of the outside funders to help with, because if we're trying to create an equitable table, you've got some tribes down here, some tribes up here, some tribes in the middle, and then some Native peoples that are just all over too. So when we think about building capacity, if you have specific ideas, like I love the idea of supporting genealogical and research services for Native peoples and tribes, which is something that I think that it's an easy thing to ask for if we know what it is. We've heard in past discussions supporting attorneys' fees and legal fees to help navigate systems for recognition, or even for advocacy. And so that's not something that the state can technically support, because we have limitations on how we can spend taxpayer dollars, but this council can work with outside funders to say, look, this is what we've heard, this is the things that we need, and this is what the community needs. So I'll stop talking. You had another thing that you wanted to say, so I'm gonna let you go ahead and say it.
Well, I just want to just say thank you for saying that, but I also think that because this is a community forum, we get to give input. I know that money is earmarked, you know, for that particular purpose. But I think today, you know, we're here as community members and we're just giving input, and maybe it's time to think outside of the box and put a little bit of that money towards, you know, tribes, you know, for in terms of healing. I think that would be a nice proposal to go back to them and just say, you know, the community is saying, maybe give a little bit, you know, consider, think outside of the box. That's all. I'm not, you know. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kessler Mata.
Yeah, I just want to definitely respond to that, because I think that's a great idea. I mean, I'm hearing, like, on the one hand, what we want and need to hear is what are the structural barriers that, you know, tribes are facing to do all of this work. And if one of the structural barriers is the statutory, right, regulations that are guiding whether it be the gaming funds or the powers of the NAHC, right? Those are types of things that can go into our recommendations about what could be changed. So like all of that stuff, that's exactly what we want to hear so that we can take note of it and start thinking creatively about how to, make recommendations and changes. So thank you for those comments.
Thank you, because that is part of the healing. When we're talking about healing and truth, we're talking about infrastructure of our communities and our homelands and all peoples. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any final thoughts on this discussion or these questions? And we do have, it looks like a time check. We have about 15 minutes left and a lot more questions, but I don't want to stop any good discussion, and we can always come back to these in the next listening session, or if you want to set up other meetings, we can do that as well, or submit written comments. Okay, so I'm going to move to the next questions, which we kind of went through, but I think would be really helpful for the academic subcommittee to get some feedback on.
We do have a raised hand from Leah. Apologies.
Leah, did you have something to add? I thought it might just be from.
No, you know what? I forgot to take my hand down.
Okay.
Could you consider having the questions emailed to us if we put our emails in the mailbox? Because in the chat box, in case we run out of time and we want to be able to answer the questions. Would that be a consideration?
We can definitely consider that and add you to our list. We can also put the link to the questions again in the chat box, and you can just click on it and they're right there too.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Loretta okay, Michael just put that link. So if you click on the link in the chat, that's all of the questions we have. And we'll carry over the questions as long as we need to as well.
Thank you.
Are there any thoughts on this piece, or I know Robert's on and usually wants to have a little bit of time. So if you'd like, you can also give your quick update.
Oop. Okay, I think I'm on. Well, the last person mentioned the healing process, and that's again, being on this Truth and Healing Council for the whole week. Myself, Kathy, I think Janelle, we're the only people that have been on here for the whole week, and this is the first time that we brought up the whole question about recognized and not recognized. So that's very interesting for this central region. But again, it makes sense because of the coastal area. But let me go into the healing process. For the healing process, educational wise. Assemblyperson James Ramos, who is Serrano and Kuya, has introduced the Assembly Bill 1551, which emphasizes more California Indian history in pre-K to 12th grade curriculum. So again, that begins the healing process for our Native students in public schools and also non-Native students to know who we are. That's one of the purposes that we're looking at and trying to get this done. I also like to encourage everybody on this chat that if they would email CTA President Toby Boyd, and I'll put his email in the chat. We kind of had a hurdle with, and I'm a teacher and I belong to CTA, but the legislative committee within CTA has issues with some of the verbiage, and we just need to give them a little push to get them going in terms of looking at what we need to do right away. It's a 2-year bill, but it's time to get it done now. We want to get this done and into the legislature. Someone mentioned about, what is that, encoded in the legislature. Well, this is, I think, an important bill that needs to be done. Also, Assemblyperson Ramos has also put an ACA, which is amending the Constitution to include this. So again, we really like to encourage all of you to support AB 1551 in looking at what we can do in terms of, this is what we're doing right now. It's not something that's being planned. It's not something that committees are going to look at. We are doing this right now. Also, Assemblyperson Ramos has just been appointed to the the social study and history curriculum committee for the state of California, for the California Department of Education. Also, my wife, who's a fourth grade teacher and is still teaching, I'm retired, but anyway, she's just been appointed to the Teachers Association State Council Board. So we now have two really important voices in a union, which is the second biggest union in the state of California, and then someone who's actually looking at the curriculum. So again, I'll put that in there. If anybody has any ideas about public education, I'll put my email also. I know we're running out of time, but again, thank you, Christina, for letting me do my little slurp, and one more day. So thank you guys, and I will put those emails in the chat room. Thank you again.
Thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow also. And Pamela has a raised hand. If you'd like to unmute your line.
Hamanatam. This is Pamela Villasenor from the Fernandino Tatavian Band of Mission Indians. My apologies for my tardiness. So I don't know if this has already been said, but I would think that the goal for the final report, which also interfaces with the last prompts of slides, is responsibility, accountability, but also the undoing harm. So as we're talking about healing, it's not just this legal analysis about all the bad that has been perpetrated by the state and its agents, but it's also how do we move forward to undo harm? So in having discussions in the last slide with some of the members from YTT, and building upon that, I just want to uplift that there are a number of considerations for non-recognized tribes. I'd say one of the biggest, of course, that California benefits off our genocide and mass dispossession of lands. But more than that, they haven't taken any movement to support the fact that our tribes do not have an IRS designation for which we can even legally exist as tribes. And so as an impact of that, it's very difficult for non-recognized tribes to be organized in a fashion because they have to pick incorporation under IRS tax code, which often leads to 501c statuses. But all of that is necessary just to open a bank account and to operate departments and programs and initiatives. So just thinking through what undoing harm could mean, it could mean creating an incorporation class for non-recognized tribes as a real world application to the state taking responsibility and accountability for how they have benefited and continue to benefit from non-recognized tribes being dispossessed. Thank you.
Thank you. Pamela. This is Deborah.
Additional comments on this piece? Okay, I'm gonna have people think about that a bit more, but on this piece, the subcommittee is it's gonna be meeting on a monthly basis and gonna be running through some of these questions and issues as it moves forward. And so as you have thoughts on this, please feel free to email us, or if you'd like to set up a meeting with the subcommittee to discuss more, we can do that as well. So I'm gonna
I just
go ahead.
want to say something regarding the 5 questions that you have, and how many minutes do we have left? Just a little, not that much time, right? The first 2 questions, when just in terms of, I'm just going to say how it was approached. This is the first time that I have been given the opportunity to. I've known about the meetings, but I usually have other meetings. So it's the first time I was given the opportunity to be here. But as an older person, I'm 66, so I'm older. What happens is, when that slide came up with the 2 questions, my brain is just trying to brainstorm real quick to give these answers. So I just want to say I appreciate you allowing us to submit the answers to these questions a little bit later, because for myself, I have to process these questions first and then answer them to you. So I just want to tell the committee, thank you for giving us that space.
Thank you. And we'll keep asking these questions in the listening sessions every month, because we want people to be able to think a bit more and to be able to kind of shape how, and even talk to their community, talk to their family, talk to everybody about what this might, what might be a good answer for all of this. So we don't mean to put folks on the spot, but just want to create an awareness of some of these questions. I'm going to go through some of the other questions just to get them in your awareness so that if you can start thinking about them a bit. And if you have ideas and you want to put them in the chat, we can look at those as well. But since we are getting up to time, I just want to make sure we get through that. So on the Youth Council, what they're looking at, which you don't have to answer right now since we're almost at time, but how can the council best engage with California Native youth population? Which platforms and messengers? Loretta and I like to think that we're young, but we actually aren't. And so we don't quite know how to communicate with this younger generation. And I think the council would also agree that they don't know quite how to do that. So if there are platforms, messengers, key partners that the council can tap into to reach Native youth, and work with them. Would love to hear about those. Should the Youth Council Subcommittee be modeled on a council structure like a mini council, or should it be open-ended, or should it be something else? Should the Youth Council be focused on California Native youth or open-ended? So open to also the descendants of potential perpetrators or people who benefit from what happened here. And then how should the council define youth? Is that, 12 to 18? Is that 8 to 24? Again, you don't need to answer now, but just for folks to think about as we move forward. And then if you do have thoughts, you can also come and speak on these questions in the council meeting tomorrow as well. And then funding partnerships. What are the needs of the community engaging in the work of the council that are not currently funded? And this is at a tribal level, an organizational level, and an individual. And this is because the group that we're working with in partnerships has said that they could potentially start just kind of putting things out to funders. And so that would be, are there travel costs that people might need to have covered? Are there stipends that people might want to have to engage in this work? Are there, other things like we discussed earlier, genealogies, things like that, that would be helpful for folks to have? And then are there recommended communications partners that the council may want to work with to spread the word? Other questions are, what should the council and staff be mindful of when seeking third parties to do the work of the council? And so this is, if we are engaging with research partners, if we are engaging with contracting partners, are there preferred qualifications, preferred experience that everybody thinks should be there? And then are there models that have worked that the council and staff can look to? So like, for example, if you know of a council that's similar to this that worked with a group to get the word out or to contract, what worked and what didn't? Are there groups where the work didn't work because the partners lacked credibility? Are there models that had more credibility because of their partners, and what did that look like? And then finally, how should the council commemorate the anniversary of the apology, and what programming would you like to see and what participants? So I'm sorry for kind of just going straight through all of that, but want to make sure it's all in your minds. If you want to join tomorrow, all of these are also on the agenda at certain points. So if you'd like to give feedback, you can. But we'll also ask these questions in the next listening session and rounds of listening sessions as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen if there's any final thoughts or comments. And we have some really good suggestions in the chat. Great job, everybody. That was a speed round, and you all did a great job.
Christina, I want to ask you, are we able to go to attend other workshops that are out of our area to give input? Are you flexible with that also? Because this is my first time, and I apologize for it being the first time, but I did enjoy myself. I did feel like it was Indian speed dating,
We absolutely welcome that. And part of why they're regional is that when we get into a more open state, we're going to actually have regional sessions. So we anticipate that there'll be people from everywhere because Native people in California live everywhere. So feel free when you're available to drop in. The point is to get more community engagement, not to restrict people to different regions. So if anyone has other, funding, that's something we could consider. What would that look like? So if you have ideas, please send that in. CIMCC Youth Group, okie doke, we are aware of them, and if they work, we'd love to work with them. Tribal high schools, tribal colleges, all of this looks really great. If you have more thoughts, we have all of the chat and that'll be reflected in the notes. If you have more thoughts, please feel free to email us or to come to more listening sessions, or we can set up another session if people want to. We always have flexibility to do more. So with that, are there any final thoughts from Councilmember Kessler Mata?
No, I just want to thank everybody sincerely for being here and hoping that we can find a way. I did like that final idea about the Youth Council being constituted with representatives from across the state, right? Different youth groups could do the same thing with the recognition subcommittee if it gets constituted tomorrow, because, right, we want to hear all the voices. This is almost like a little focus group, right? And the more we can get the information and put it through the process, I think the better. So thank you, everybody.
And Dr. Mata, I just want to just say, because you're from you're a representative from our tribe, I would just like to recommend that another meeting for Central area be hosted, because it's so much easier to do this than I think we'd be more effective if we approached it this way with community versus asking people to type in. You know, I think it would be effective if people were given questions ahead of time and then come to the meeting. That way they've processed, and then we can do this. But I really recommend doing another meeting instead of sending that in. So I just want to say I appreciate the time. You know, everyone. I want to just say thank you to everyone, and I want to say thank you to people that I don't know, and I haven't met. I'd like to just say it's a pleasure meeting you, but most of you that I do know, it was good seeing you, and thank you for the opportunity of being here. So, awesome, Makini.
And just really quickly, I want to say thank you to everyone for being here, and please continue to share the link to this. Christina and I are only two people. We're trying, to get the word out, but thank you so much for being here, and please continue to share with your networks.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all, and we'll see some of you tomorrow if you're available. Take care.
Thank you.